2930, the end of the 2930 school year, we're looking at 2,728 dwellings popping up, people ready to live in our school district. And so, to me, that's a number that I always go, oh my goodness, that is such a high number. So, what does that mean for enrollments? If you look at the black line the enrollment that you're seeing is just those dwellings that are already built today. No new dwellings. These are based on the houses, apartments, condos, duplexes that already exist and people are already living in. You'll see a small incremental bump from now until 2930, 3031, and then you'll see a slight increase. So if you look at just the houses that already exist in our district, by 3031, we're looking at 161 more students, and by 3334, we're looking at 366. Now, it shows an increase, but as we look at the data, we call it minimal or flat, because what we're seeing is a lower number of seniors graduating and a higher number of kindergartners coming in, and that's where we're seeing that difference come into play. And then once you get past 3031, it's more math, statistics in terms of prediction. But even with this flat trend, we're still struggling for adequate space throughout our elementary buildings. That's where we're at right now, and we know there's going to be a bump and a little growth there. And then future enrollment trends do not alleviate the facility space issues that we have. Now, I'm going to add the enrollment that's anticipated from these new dwellings, and look where that number takes us to. So, what we're seeing in 25-26, a small bump, and then that continues to increase over the first 3 years. So where in previous slides, when we're just looking at housing or dwellings that already exist, we looked at like 160 to 300 growth. Now we're looking at a 1,300 to 1,600 growth. So the new dwellings, as it sits on the books today, is going to bring us a large amount of students moving into our district. The majority of our growth comes from increased residential dwellings. That's where our student growth is coming from. Larger in the increase in the first 5 years, and then it kind of tapers off. And that's, if you're using statistics for prediction, that typically happens after 5 years. It's more of a math equation than prediction. And then steady trend mirrors, growth 6 to 10. Now there's positive and negatives about the dwellings driving enrollment. Positive is people want to come and live in West Clermont. Negative is we got to find space for the kids. And so that's what we're looking at right now. What schools are impacted the most? So we looked at where current was, and we used current based on the September 15th date, where we're current, and then by 3031. So when we talk about that 2030 plan, that's 3031 school year. Look at how the growth is booming. We see a large growth in Amelia and Clough and Holly Hill and Willowville and WT. Merwin isn't as large, but they're already out of capacity right now. So any growth is large growth for them. Willowville can take on a larger number, but their capacity is a little larger. One of the takeaways that I need you to look at here is under the current configuration and of grade level building configuration, space is an issue in every building in the next by 2030. And in some buildings, it's that way now. So what does that mean? If we don't do anything, if we maintain the current grade levels and the current structure in all the elementary buildings, we run out of space. So what we have found is when we think about a traditional school setting, we think about classrooms and we think about, a room for art, a room for, gym for PE, and a room for music, and space for our special needs kids. We think about that, we think about education. When they look at the column that says capacity, that's not thinking of those spaces. That's filling up every single space with a kid. Right, so what we found is that there's this 85%, 15% kind of cut. We found that it takes approximately 15% of our capacity to have specialized programming for specials and special needs support and staff support. So what we try to do is if we can fill with actual bodies up to 85% of our capacity, and that starts to look like a typical school with typical, what we would think about as having typical support. So if you look at the 85% capacity, which is the next column over, so Amelia says it can hold 800 students. Well, once you get past 680 students, you have to start taking and putting PE on a cart, not PE, but art on a cart and music on a cart, and you're putting kids in closets again. So we want to stay close to that current capacity, or as close to that 85% capacity. Now next to it, you see the current enrollment. So we're already there in many, like just on the cusp of a lot of those this year. But going forward, it's all right. I'm going to stress again, if we do nothing, but continue on how we're continuing, we're completely out of space. We don't have space to do what many people think school looks like and should feel. So let's talk about enrollment a little deeper and what they look like and how they need supported. So the first slide here talks about our predictive analytic model. So every year we compare the model of what they predicted versus what showed up, so that we want to make sure we're paying for this predictive model. If we want to make sure it's still accurate and valid. When you look at this slide, you can see what the district prediction was per year, what the actual enrollment was, and how accurate it was. So you can see since 16, 17, we have been pretty accurate. The model has been pretty accurate at predicting actual enrollment numbers. Almost 98% average over the last 9 years. Now you see a couple dips. 2021, it was 92%. Well, that was, if you remember, that was COVID. We had recovery after that in 21, 22, and then we made 3 decisions, one in 22, 23, one in 23, 24, and one in 24, 25. Because of space and staffing shortages, we made 3 decisions that caused that enrollment to shrink. And we're going to talk about each one of those for a moment. The first decision we made was to limit the open enrollment numbers, which ultimately decreased our entire enrollment numbers. So if you look at from 14, 15, you can watch all OE is open enrollment. Our open enrollment went from 119 that year, and open enrollment is those kids who live in another district and they request to come and be a part of our district. Okay? These are not West Clermont kids, they're kids wanting to come and be a part of for programs or purposes, or their grandparents may live in our area and they're the child care kind of thing. We were growing exponentially, especially from 19, 20, 20, 21, 21, 22, we were hitting 235, 275. The first year we limited open enrollment was 22, 23 to only people entering grade 5, grade 8, and grade 12 and limited expectations. We had 359 people apply, so we had to turn 284 down. And then next year we limited even more, we had to turn another 54 down, and then finally this year we had to turn we denied 29, then we denied 24. So we've continued to deny people who've wanted to be a part of that. Now, the state of Ohio pushes that every school district have an open enrollment policy. And so we try to adhere to that as best we can, but space and staffing can be an issue. But just this is to let you know how much, like we probably turned away approximately 400 kids in those 2 years. That would have, on our enrollment, showed us 400 kids higher than it is today. Something that we did last year. So we wanted to set our kindergartners up for success. So we looked at changing the kindergarten age requirement starting this school year. So we moved from turning 5 from September 30th to August 1st. And we followed the research that was published that talked about those who start kindergarten a little older are the measurable advantage compared to their younger classmates over the long term, higher test scores in their academic careers, more likely to attend college, less likely to spend time in the juvenile justice system. It made sense. We also put us in line with the other school districts that are around us. So we made that change this was the first school year we put that into effect. What did that do to us enrollment-wise? Well, again, looking at the predictive model versus who actually showed up from 1819, you can see our prediction to actual enrollment was almost 100%. And then all of a sudden you get to 24, 25 and you go, whoa, 83.7%, what happened? Well, we went back to the 23, 24 school year and thought, okay, we put it in place there, how many kindergartners would have not been kindergartners last year? And it was approximately 100 kids. So that's 560 to 669. If we didn't make that change and we got that similar amount in, we would be spot on here too. So again, we made a decision what's best for kids, but enrollment-wise, it looks like enrollment went down because now, here's the kicker. This is only a temporary dip. Those kids will be ready for kindergarten next year. So we expect that to pop back up to the mid-600s. So it was a low year this year, and we expect those kids to come back to us now. So we're expecting those numbers to be different in starting in the 25, 26 school year. Why do I tell you these things? Because we want to make sure that no one is misled by the dip. This is our actual enrollment trends since 2016. And if you look at the 22, 23, really the 23, 24, if you just looked at this picture, you'd be like, oh my gosh, we're not gaining kids, we're losing kids. Kids are leaving all the time. Well, no, that dip were decisions that we made. They were manufactured by decisions we made that was best for kids and best for our staff. This past dip from 23 to 24, that's half of that dip was kindergarten. So we anticipate this to rebound, and with the new builds and the new dwellings, we're expecting this to take a pretty drastic turn over the next 3 to 5 years to an upward trend in a positive direction. So when we put this out here, I want people to understand, don't be misled by the dip. We manufacture it, and we're continuing to grow. Okay? So let's talk about some of our diverse learners, because kids are more than a number. Right now, we've been talking about children as numbers, but children are more than numbers, and some of our children have very special needs that require more support, more resources, and more space. So let's go through some of that. Continued growth in our English language learner student population. If you look at the 2021 school year, we had 139 students identified as English language learners. By 23-24, that had grown to 267. And then by August 1st of this year, we were already at 301. So this subpopulation of diverse learners is growing exponentially right now. And I don't remember, Allie, do you know how many languages are spoken? Yeah.
It was 24 at one point.
Yeah.
I don't know if that has changed.
Didn't go down.
Yeah, it continues to grow. And so, again, it's in blue, and you're going to see this a couple times on the slide because it has to hit home. To continue to grow our diverse learning population, does have a significant impact on the number of spaces and staff needed to support their academic and development needs. We can see that we don't see this necessarily shrinking anytime soon. Most of that growth is at the elementary level. Right, special education. The first box on the top in blue, the special education numbers are showing a steady increase. It's showing when it says end of year, it's the May 1st. We looked at May 1st of each year. It's the largest between 22, 23, and 23, 24. We're seeing that growth. At the bottom yellow, you see that growth naturally occurs at the elementary at a higher rate than secondary combined. Of course, we expect that elementary, this tends to be where students get identified, with special needs, and then we try to help support those needs. And some of our students, can kind of leave the special education program if we can help grow them early and get them to help them compensate and modify for their disabilities. They may need less and less as they get older. But that doesn't surprise us that elementary is that heavy. And of course, elementary is where we have most of the space issues. Now, this is the next slide here, we have no way to account for. These are the numbers. So we had 52 as of October 1st. And I'm going to tell you that number's probably higher today. As of October 1st, we had 52 students who moved in between the start of school and October 1st that we had no idea were coming. So we didn't have space planned for them. We didn't have staff planned for them. We didn't have resources planned for them. They moved in with an IEP in hand with special needs that we have to obviously address. We're happy that they want to be part of our community, but we did not plan for this. So you'll see us constantly have to bring parapros or sometimes even special ed teachers throughout the year to hire to help support that. Again, in the big picture, autism seems to be our greatest growing disability across the district. Elementary accounts for 3/4 of that. Serving diverse learners, particularly those diagnosed with intellectual disabilities and autism, require additional staffing and space. And special ed numbers will continue to increase. Like I said, this is October 1st. This is going to grow, and the need is going to grow. So we looked at gifted. What are our gifted students? How's that fluctuation working? So we saw some decreases initially in the first couple of years, and remember 2021 COVID. You got to keep that in mind because the pandemic does play a role on identification. How we identify, how quickly we can identify, when we can evaluate. So COVID disrupted the evaluation process, so that does make sense why it might have dipped. Gifted evaluations was renormed after COVID, so there was a significant increase in students identified as gifted in math, and also more students identified in creative thinking ability in the 23-24 school year. As of October 1st, we were already serving 827, and I sound like a broken record, but that number will continue to grow. Homelessness. Homelessness is a problem. It's a problem everywhere, but it's a problem in our district. You see relatively low numbers in 2021 and 21-22. I think they're a lot larger than that, but because of we were in the hybrid model in the 2021 and we were trying to get back to normal, a lot of that may not have been reported. But as you can see, in 22-23, 23-24, we were at 56 kids who identified as homeless coming in and seeking an education with us. As of October 1st, that number was up to 57. And unfortunately, that number will tend to grow as the year goes on as well. Excuse me. Transient students. So transiency is we look at students who came to West Clermont or left after the first day of school and before the end of school. So the kids coming and going while the school year is going on. That's transiency. And so what you look at, let's just go 23-24 school year. We had 574 enter between the first day and the last day, and 434 leave us between the first day and the last day, which adds up to 1,008. Now, they're not the same kids necessarily, but what this tells us is we had 1,008 kids, combined, come or leave our school, which is about 13% of our total overall population. That's about 6 kids coming or going a day. So number one, that makes our enrollment department, very busy throughout the year. But number two, what does that do to a classroom? One day the kid's here, the next day the kid's not, the next day another kid's here. Having those norms in the classrooms and building that culture and community gets disrupted when kids come in and out of that. After the first 6 weeks, by October, we were already at 245 for this school year. But transiency occurs, and it does cause a disruption that we try to help. Like we try to support everybody, but it is a factor of learning and cohesiveness in the buildings. So then we looked at why do our West Clermont students leave? Like, where do they go? And can we kind of figure that out? So we looked at where our students are going. So we're going to start with our students open enrolling to other public schools. And so if you look at the blue table, you can see that has been decreasing over time, which means more and more of our students are choosing to stay with us than going out to other public elementary schools. 23-24, ended up being at 389. We're at 354 now, but look at the 23-24, that's the end of the year, how many left? So it went from the 490s to the high 400s to the high 300s. So kids are starting to want to be here and stay with us. So that's very positive for us. The overall trend is a decrease. The majority of the open enrollment out to public schools is at the high school level. And since 21-22, that's been a steady decline at the middle school and high school. So that's good. They're starting to stay with us. Where are they going? If you look at the table to the right, that's yellow, they're going to these top 5 school districts in that order every year. Look at the numbers. New Richmond takes most of our kids. Bethel next, Batavia next, Milford next, and then Williamsburg. And then when I say all others, there were approximately 34 different public school options throughout the greater Cincinnati area and out west and east and north. But ultimately, we're seeing our kids go to New Richmond, Bethel, Batavia, and Milford. So one of the things that we always ask ourselves is why? How can we get them to stay? How can we attract them back to us? What's causing them to pick New Richmond rather than staying with us? We would love to get them back. I mean, that's another 389 kids we would have in our buildings. All right, private school. Who's going to private school? Our West Clermont kids are going to private school. So if you look at, this table's kind of interesting. In blue, in 1920 it's 41. 2021 was that COVID where we went hybrid. Then it dropped for 21-22, 22-23, and then boom, 23-24 we jumped up to 68, and this year, as of October 1st, we jumped up to 89. So what happened? Well, one thing that we didn't know that happened, that Ed Choice vouchers. Prior to July of 2023, Ed Choice vouchers said a public school student can take their money to a private school if they met this list of criteria. Well, in July of 2023, Ed Choice came out with Ed Choice expansion, and what that did was basically say it's really based on the parent's socioeconomic status. So if you're under the threshold of the socioeconomic status level, then you could take your money and go elsewhere. And so we feel like this increase at the elementary was part of the Ed Choice expansion. Now, it is good to see that middle school and high school dipped a little bit the last couple of years, but it started to increase a little bit more. But we think that the ease of using Ed Choice is why we lost some kids here to private schools. What about online schools? Our kids are going to online schools. If you look at this again, 1920, 148, 2021, when we were doing a hybrid model 2, 161, 21, 22, we were trying to come back from COVID, it was 170, and then it started dropping from there. So the majority out is at the high school. As you can see, 48, like, let's go to 23, 24, 97, we're at the high school, versus 38 and 15 at the elementary and middle. So we're seeing a high school population of kids that really want to choose an online option. So some of this, as we start to contemplate how we do education, is there room for West Clermont to have an online model? It's questions we ask ourselves as we start to evolve our educational model. So finally, home education, which used to be called homeschooling. They moved it to home education. As you can see, that has continued to grow each year. And the overall trend is that it's growing. Remember, the 24-25 school year at 512, that's as of October 1st. And again, recent legislation has made it much easier for families to choose this home education option. They used to have to register with us, and we could track them. There was assessments. We knew what grade level equivalent they should be in. Now they just have to inform us their child is going to homeschool or home education. That's it. So we don't track them. We don't know where they're at. We don't know the grade level equivalent. The state has made it very easy for parents to elect to take this model. So what does that mean? So this is all of them at a glance. Open enrollment is down. Southern public schools is down. Online schooling is down. Private school is up. Home education up. And it's just interesting that the two places where we have increases are where legislative decisions has made it easier for families to choose these options. Not necessarily better options, but easier options. Our overall trend is that we're showing more of our West Clermont students leaving West Clermont, and so we're hoping to kind of turn that spigot off and try to get them to stay. And so that's some of the things that we're working on. So, what's this mean for us? Enrollment fluctuates. Even with the best predictive tool, enrollment will always be a moving target. This fluctuation has a direct impact on the capacity of our school buildings and our staffing needs. Actual enrollment appears to be stable with increase in predicted growth from new dwellings. When comparing our actual enrollment to that, thinking 2030, we see a 1,351 projected student increase, and if we go out to 30 through 34, that's 1,651. Larger cohorts continue to enter elementary, and smaller cohorts are leaving the high school. That also helps increase enrollment there. An increase in diverse learning population has a significant impact on the number of spaces and staff and resources we need to educate them appropriately. This is my favorite. I never want to lose this, and so I put it on here. More families are making West Clermont their district of choice. We love that, right? We love that as a community. More people want to be in West Clermont. We love that. But when that happens, when we become that district of choice and people are starting to move into our district, we have to start looking at what facility options we have and how do we take them all in and how do we support them in a way that's going to help them be academically successful. And finally, we'll continue to monitor the need for modulars, redistricting elementary boundaries, and even interdistrict transfers. We are constantly looking at how can we ease the pressure points across the district by moving kids around. And that'll continue to be in effect until there's no one else to move, until we just get to that. All right, any questions? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's a no-go, Larry, for sure.
No, we
Oh.
think we actually have sound now.
Oh, we can try it, okay. All right. Thank you. We'll see.
I'm doing the same thing.
Hello, West Clermont community. Over the past year, we have been actively engaging with you to shape a master facilities plan designed to meet the needs of our students, staff, and families for years to come. Your voices have been integral in this process. We've conducted town hall meetings, focus groups, facility tours, and surveys to identify our community's values and priorities. West Clermont is a district on the rise. We've achieved great results with the resources we currently have. Our community's commitment to education is evident, and there's a clear desire to continue this success. We cannot overlook the importance of investing in our facilities to support our students and staff. After several workings and analysis of community feedback, the CAT team presented a plan to the board that appeared to meet most of our needs. Since that presentation, new information and additional ideas have emerged. As a result, we have come up with an innovative iteration of the CAT plan that solves all of our facility challenges at a reduced rate. I would like to highlight the proposal that was recently approved by the Board of Education. It includes creating a new middle-level experience by building a new 5th and 6th grade intermediate school connected to the new 7th and 8th grade middle school on the current campus. This is one building connecting two separate smaller learning environments. This plan would create one new elementary school for grades PK4 instead of replacing existing schools. This would reduce the number of elementary schools from 7 to 6. Preschool would be housed at the 3 of our 6 elementary schools. And finally, this plan would address inequities at all of our school buildings by adding a library to Clough Pike Elementary, along with more classrooms, adding classrooms at WT Elementary, and renovating the libraries at Amelia and WT schools. These modernized libraries will serve as a school innovation hub. And this plan also calls for upgrades to school safety and security, technology, and furniture as needed while keeping operational costs down.
We're the largest middle school in the state of Ohio, and our facility is not only outdated, but it was not designed for the age group that attends. We're still proud of our accomplishments as it relates to performance index and attendance rates, but in order to create that momentum and continue that momentum, we need a modern learning environment that meets the needs of our kids for a changing world.
Here at Clough Pike, overcrowding has become such an issue that the library has become a classroom. The proposal includes building us a new center and adding classrooms. This will create an innovation hub to help students thrive in their next step.
At WT, we have a passionate community and dedicated staff, but overcrowding is holding us back. The proposed plan will allow us to create a safe and engaging environment for our students. Students deserve facilities that inspire growth and learning, and this proposal addresses that need head-on.
We asked, we listened, and we responded. This proposal will preserve the idea of neighborhood schools, reflecting our community values and our commitment to fiscal responsibility. To review the full presentation and report that I made to the Board of Education, please visit our website to get all the details. In closing, I invite you to continue engaging with us. As we move forward in the process, your feedback and involvement is essential to create a bright future for our students. Thank you for your continued support to West Clermont Schools. So we just wanted to share this video as a reminder of the proposal, and it helps just to have the visuals associated with it. I want to hit a few highlights from questions that have come up this week that just might help give you a sense of what's on the minds of people out there. Number one, the metaphor that I used at the last meeting was this idea of West Clermont School District as a Jeep needing 4 tires to align. The tires of our learning as first and foremost important, our workforce, our learning environments, and our partnerships. And that we need all 4 of those rolling together to be able to continue the academic success of West Clermont. When I speak about the academic success, we've spent time at different town halls and different sessions recently talking about how we have gone from spending in the bottom 3% of the state when I first came to West Clermont, and performing in that bottom 25%, or even 15%, to now we are spending in the bottom 17% of the state. We're still spending in the bottom,
yet we are performing in the top 40%. We are certainly very, very proud of that, but we're not satisfied. That's not where we want to stay, and that's not where we see the potential of West Clermont. And it takes all four of these attires aligned together to move this district forward, so that we are investing in our students' learning and the educators here versus patching and repairing buildings. The one thing that we do know from the OFCC is when they deem a building, when it hits the 66% threshold of spending that you're putting into patching and repairing and making things work, when you hit that percentage of what you would be spending on a new building, they recommend bulldozing that building and starting over. And so we are going with their recommendations on this plan, and because we are partnering with them. And this is a unique time that the board voted for us to be able to be a partner with OFCC and did this work well in advance to position us for when it was time to go out to our community to make sure that we had that partner with the state. It's not an automatic that you get that partnership. And there's some urgency there when we go out for the ballot, just so you know. Once you ask for those dollars, OFCC gives you 16 months then to come back with your share so that they're willing to then continue the partnership and give their share. So it's not an infinite amount of money for an infinite amount of time. We would lose our spot in line if we're not acting within that 16-month period. So that's just something to note. And although we all know that a brick and mortar room is not going to be the accelerator of outcomes, it's always about the teacher in the classroom. We have some issues of real aging buildings that put a barrier up. Every day at that middle school, they have to jump over 17 barriers just to facilitate learning. Those kinds of things do put a drag on the staff, on the students, and they slow down the learning process. And so the learning environment is really an enabler of being able to have all this come together. And the plan specifically, when you're designing a building, a 5, 6, 7, 8 that's specifically designed for the needs of middle school learners, you're going to far outweigh the advantages of what we face today with the overcrowded classrooms, spaces that were not designed for middle school or modern learning, and the hurdles that we face. Additionally, when we consolidate in the in the elementaries and move from 7 to 6, it gives us a chance to realign the school district and really up our issues around equity. No matter where you live in West Clermont, you should have a similar educational experience. But right now, your address determines the kind of educational experience you have. And we want to make sure that is not a story in West Clermont, that we are eradicating that. So you've already voted on the modified CAP plan. That's what we've come to call it. And I've said it in the video, but I'll repeat it one more time. What it includes is a new configuration of the school district. There will be 3 pre-K buildings. There will be 6 elementary buildings. So 3 of those will have pre-K 4, 3 of those will just be K4, situated throughout the school district. We haven't determined the location of the new elementary yet. We do have property at Brantner, we have property at Merwin, we have property at Holly Hill, and we have property on the middle school campus, would be some of the ones that we could consider as part of this. And we'll continue to dig into that and decide what makes the most operationally sound decision down the road. The rest of the plan includes a 5, 6, 7, 8 on the middle school campus. And again, the idea is not one large building like West Clermont High School just moved down the street. It's meant to feel like 2 buildings connected together so that those environments feel smaller for the unique needs of the young adolescents. And then obviously the 912 high school. Some additional updates we included in this plan is to vamp up what we have in, ramp up what we have at WT and Clough by adding spaces and by modernizing the libraries at Clough and Amelia and as well as WT so that they can be more equivalent to what you would find at Summerside Elementary and Willowville Elementary. All of these schools will have the capacity of about 725, except for Amelia, it'll have 800 as a capacity. And roughly, with the numbers that David has projected, it would end up being about 600 students in every school. And based on what you heard David say tonight, that gives us the space for strong educational opportunities in all the classrooms, but also the wraparound services, the programming, the specials, the special education, English language learner, gifted services, all the additional things that we need to do inside of a schoolhouse can comfortably happen in this new plan. We also plan across the school district to do safety upgrades, furniture and targeted places, as well as technology upgrades across the entire school system. So Dan will now take you through a couple resolutions to vote on that detail how we would go about financing this and kind of where we are in the step that connects us with the auditor's office and the Department of Taxation to get the ballot language and get everything tidied up so that we are meeting all requirements and meeting the deadlines.
Good.
Did you guys have questions before we turn over to Dan?
Any questions on the need and the plan?
On the need?
Yeah,
The plan and the need.
no, that's what we've been
Okay.
talking about, so, okay.
All right.
All right, we'll turn that over to Dan then.
All right, so in front of you are items 7.03 through 7.06. And if I could, I just want to go briefly, and then as I do each one of these, explain a little bit more to it. 7.03 is a resolution requesting the fiscal officer to certify maximum maturity of bonds. So in the proposal that we put forth on the method to finance the facility plan, we were looking at both a 0.25% on in earnings tax, and then we were looking at a bond issue of $77 million. What this resolution does, 7.03, is request the fiscal officer, myself, to certify to the board that when the bonds are being issued, the way the funds will be used, that the usage of those will last at least 37 years, because the bonds are going to last 37 years. And so the request of that certification, and when that resolution, if passed, I'll certify that to the board and present that to President Patton for that to happen. That certification, and what I just described, is 7.04. So of that $77 million in bonds, if we were able to go forward and issue that, 69.3 million is estimated to be for the construction to last at least 40 years. $77.7 million of the 77 million are for equipment, furnishings, and other capital improvements that will last at least 10 years. And when you average that dollar amount out and you average the life expectancy of that, that's the 37 years. The purpose of that is so that when an investor, because in order for us to sell bonds, we need investors to say, yeah, we'll buy those, that there's an asset that is backing that bond issuance to it, okay? So resolution, and again, we did this in a section that I believe puts the superintendent and myself in unity on the same page with these actions going forward. So it's a recommendation of the superintendent and the treasurer that the resolution requesting fiscal officer to certify maximum maturity of bonds as presented. So that is the first resolution we are requesting for a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Romano. You've heard the recommendation. Would someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Chumley. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Through discussion, I'll start with discussion and then I'll move to everyone else. So, school board members are faced a steep learning curve upon taking office. We must quickly grasp school law, become adaptive to policy development, and manage resources effectively. But to effectively serve our students, we must actively listen and understand their needs to achieve academic success, while also valuing the feedback provided by our community. Additionally, we must work cohesively as a team despite our diverse backgrounds, perspectives, and levels of expertise. The West Clermont Board of Education and district leaders have been committed to fostering an engaged communities through interactive and effective communication. Our goal has been to encourage active participation from parents and residents in the various districts. We welcome their involvement in information meetings, school organizations, district surveys, and community focus groups. By working together, we can build a stronger and more connected community. The board should assess the community to understand why reform or change is needed, the progress is being made, and the importance of sustaining the efforts. Engaging in open dialogue with the community is essential for defining what students' achievement truly means in our school district. This collaborative approach ensures that diverse perspectives are considered. The school board and the district administration plays a key role in creating a sense of urgency for improving student opportunities. They achieve this by proactively informing the community about the current state of student achievements, highlighting challenges, and making compelling cases for the need for change and associated cost. By fostering understanding and transparency, the board can effectively communicate the reasonings behind any proposed reforms, i.e. the master facility plans. We can showcase our progress and emphasize the importance of sustaining efforts. In the end, the community must let their voices be heard and ultimately decide the district's future. And we'll continue to open it for open discussion if anybody else would like to discuss. There's no other discussion? Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Okay. Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn,
No.
Mrs. Spencer,
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
4 yes, 1 no. So item 7.04 was presenting the certificate of maximum maturity to Mr. Patton and to the Board of Education. Item 7.05 is a resolution declaring the necessity. And that resolution, this is the resolution whereby we provide the purpose of putting an issue before the voters. It identifies the need that we have and the plan to fulfill that need with it. It also looks at how we're going to finance that and proposes, again, a 0.25% earning tax. That is on an earned income basis, so it primarily is wages that is being taxed. There is an option to do adjusted gross income. That is not the decision or proposal within this resolution. It is just really primarily on earnings. So Social Security income, earnings on investment, and retirement income are not included as being taxed on that earnings or on that earnings tax. The other portion for the financing is a request for the issuance of $77 million in bonds. That is through property tax millage. And part of this resolution then requests that we go forward and file this with the county auditor's office and other agencies. But with the county auditor is to get an estimate of that millage amount that would do that financing. In some preliminary estimates, which are not in this or part of this, but in the past that we showed, we believe it would be plus or minus 1.8 mils to do that. So this resolution, and again, it's the resolution declaring the necessity of raising $5,068,891 annually for the school district purpose by levying an annual tax on school district income, as well as issuing $77 million of general obligation bonds for permanent improvements and levying a tax outside of the 10 mil limitation to pay debt service on such bonds, and submitting the question of such tax levies and bonds to the electors of the school district, and requesting the county auditor to certify matters in connection therewith. So that is there. Again, the total financing would be $154 million, part of it through a earnings tax and the other part through bonds, which would be supported by a property tax. That resolution is so recommended by the superintendent and the treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Romano. You've heard the recommendation. I will put that in the form of a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Rudy. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
No.
Mrs. Spencer?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 no. Motion carries. Okay. Item 7.06 is a resolution authorizing the Board of Education of the West Clermont Local School District to apply for a ballot consent. So this resolution follows the resolution of necessity. This is the resolution that requests some actions beyond this. It is asking the Department of Education, and it's also requesting a filing with the Department of Taxation to do an application for that financing and to allow it to be presented to the voters via a ballot. It, again, follows the resolution of necessity. Those formal applications, if this resolution is passed, will be completed and submitted this week. That is in advance of a December meeting, if passage is with this, for a resolution to proceed. So as we move forward, the prior resolution had some filings and certifications to be done. This resolution does the same thing about requesting or doing an application for the financing to be on the ballot. Okay, we would file that with the Department of Education and with the Department of Taxation. So the resolution, as recommended by the Superintendent and Treasurer, is a resolution authorizing the Board of Education of the West Clermont Local School District to apply for ballot consent. So recommended.
Thank you, Mr. Romano. You've heard the recommendation. Would someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Rudy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chumley. Is there any discussion? The only discussion I have, or question I have, Mr. Romano, and not to put you on the spot, but when we're talking about the election piece of it and taking it to a ballot, can you talk, and you might be getting to it, but can you talk about, like, I know you don't know what a cost is, but like the shared cost and putting stuff on the.
Sure, that's a good question. So it would be one ballot item, one issue on the ballot, okay? So both for the earnings tax and for the millage. So if we are the only item on the ballot, and I did talk with the Board of Elections last week, their estimate was that it would be about $110,000 to $120,000 cost to the school district to put that on the ballot, okay? If there are other issues on that ballot, okay, so if there was a statewide issue, if another jurisdiction that either a township was on the ballot, then that cost would be split of where that was, okay, of those precincts. That cost would be split with the school district. So we know that a maximum is going to be plus or minus 115 to 120,000 would be the max, okay? If other issues are on that ballot, it would be less.
Perfect. Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
No.
Mrs. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 no, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romano.
Good evening.
The good stuff.
Great stuff coming up. So, in the last two board updates, I have given you, all the things that we had expected coming back in August. As you know, they are behind, and there's just a lot of litigation going on right now. We're trying to keep up with them, and we're going to continue to look at the policies. But I sent you quite a long document, 140 plus pages. I'd like to go through each one of those pages. Just
Is
kidding.
this a 5-minute forecast?
Yeah, is this a Mr. Romano?
Fiscal.
Ow.
So I'm going to use this as a summary, and I would invite, we did have a policy committee meeting prior to our meeting tonight. We'll have another one in December. If you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call, and we can go through those, because it does encompass a lot of our cabinet members, from our technology to teaching and learning to HR are involved in this. So I'm just going to do a really quick, brief overview
Is there a football game tonight?
There is no football game tonight. The Bengals did not lose this past weekend, so
There is a football game.
we didn't play. So as we move forward from the October update, the first part are bylaws, 0100 to 0173. In those bylaws, you'll see revisions, you'll see technical corrections, you'll have a new one where actually they revised or consolidated 165.1 and 165.2 together. Since they did that, they rescinded both of those as well. They've renumbered and rescinded another one. So those will be as far as the bylaws go, a part of this update. As we move into the policies, policy 41-2008 and 41-21, that goes into the new state wrap-back system. And so we're in accordance with what the expectations are from this other requirements from the state. You also will see in policy 51-31 a revision. 51-36 is the one that we saw a lot of with House Bill 250 and Senate Bill 29 with personal communication devices. That is a revision. That's also in 51-3601. 5200, policy 5200 is a revision, and that goes with House Bill 214. And we've talked about that before. We actually talked about that last month and put that through as well. 5500 has to do with student conduct. Parent rights under 5780 was a revision through, which was required by Senate Bill 29. Policy 6220, 6320, and 6460 are all from the Treasurer's Department as revisions as recommended through Neola. 753001 was rescinded and replaced with 7530, and that has to deal with board-owned technical resources and the use of communication devices. 7530.02, 7540.03, 7540.04 all deal with Senate Bill 29. Again, following that, those are the ones that we've been waiting on as they work through those. Policy 7540.09 has to do with AI, and that is a new policy, and that is going to continually evolve as we go through that. 8310, public records, is a revision. 9160, public attendance at school events, is a revision, and that would be all the policies as far as that section goes. Then the following section was an update to our uniform grant guidance and Education Department General Administration regulations. This is guidance for grants, both federally and state, and those include policies 1130 all the way through 7450. And again, these are the revisions that have been recommended. Last time they did these was 2013, and so this is something that we have to do. We have to follow the guidance so that we can get our money through our grants. And so all of those are revisions, as you will see in the board update. As this is a first reading, there's no action tonight. However, if you do have questions, please let me know, and I will get you the answers to those.
Thank you, Mr. Gephardt.
Thank you.
Next, we have the district calendar.
Good evening. This evening, we are requesting your approval of the 25-26. This is the time of year where, like, whew, you start talking about 26 and it feels a little crazy. But we're requesting your approval for the 25-26 academic calendar. I know that our families will be appreciative of us getting this approved so that they can begin making plans for the next school year. I just wanted to hit a few highlights of the calendar and similarities and or any potential differences between the calendar that we have this year. We are beginning next, the requested or the calendar we're requesting your approval for begins school around the same time that we did this year. It's kind of the equivalent date to what we did this year. We had a lot of, something that we did new this year that we're planning to continue next year was a staggered start across our elementary schools that allowed our teachers and our students to sort of get, just oriented to school and their teachers and classroom procedures, et cetera, under their belt with around half of the student population, and that was something that we had previously not done at the elementary school for grades like 1 through 5, and that was really well received this year. So we're planning to do that again next year. We're also planning to continue our orientation for just 6th graders one day and just 9th graders for the next day, so that they have an opportunity to really participate in activities that have been designed to really support their sense of belonging and really welcoming them to like the new school. So we plan to include that again for this year. Other highlights include, one of the things that is different this year for staff, we clustered each of the exchange days that are allowed by law together around the week of Thanksgiving, so that both students and staff would be able to take advantage of a full week at Thanksgiving. That's sort of an exchange. This year we had a fall break. So this is kind of instead of that fall break. Fall break will still exist for our students and family, but it won't exist for staff in that same way. But it was preferred to have that full week at Thanksgiving. That's a change that many districts have begun to go to. And so we believe that this will be a really good opportunity, again, both for students and for staff. So that's just something to note as being different. This year, Good Friday falls over spring break, and so there wasn't a need for us to have an additional day in April because of that. And that also is the time of year that works best for us as it relates to our testing schedule that occurs in the spring, and so it just kind of made sense to have our spring break fall that way. We're also clustering some professional learning days similar to what we did this year around when Election Day falls in November. That was, you heard earlier, the Take Care of Your Selfie. That was an event that happened on one of those days in November. And then while we haven't yet gotten to our days in February, we're planning to be able to host a district-wide professional learning day where all of our staff members can come together. And so being able to cluster a few of those days together really allows us some flexibility and opportunity to do some things that might be difficult otherwise. And of note, this calendar does have one more additional instructional day for students than our calendar this year does. So that's the only other difference. There's one more day of instruction for students in this proposed calendar than there is this year, and it's just sort of based on how the calendar kind of worked out. So I don't know if you have any questions, but if not, I respectfully request your approval of the 25-26 school calendar.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any thought about in the future doing like Monday, Tuesday, days off, and then Wednesday, Thursday for the following month, and then Friday, Monday for the next month, so that you don't have so many Fridays off that all in the same year?
We have considered that. Part of the reason that there are those Fridays, for example, Friday, March 6th or October 10th, those by contract were required to provide teachers a day for planning that falls at the end of the grading period. And so to end a grading period like in the middle of the week, just add some additional like challenges, scheduling challenges, logistic challenges. And so that's why like March 6th, October 10th, we do have one January 5th. What's the other one that and the end of this school year, the May 22nd, that's why those are all on Fridays, is because of their correspondence to the end of the grading period for students. So, but beyond that, we have tried to have other ones. We've tried to have those days like fall around when a holiday might be. So for planning purposes for families, so for example, January 16th and 19th, that's around a holiday. And so we try to cluster those days so that if families are planning to, travel for the holiday, those 2 days are corresponding or the same thing in February. So we did do that with September 29th so that it wouldn't be another Friday. But it's just kind of like a lot of factors at play where we're trying to both balance something that makes sense for families so that they can have some regularity in knowing what to expect, while also needing to, take into account those contractual obligations that we have to our staff members as well. So it's not necessarily as simple as what we may like for it to be with just rotating, Mondays, Fridays, or Wednesdays, Thursdays, because of those other factors.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question too. How many professional development days did they get last year or this year compared to this calendar?
It's the same
It's
number.
exactly the same.
Yes.
Is there any other discussion?
Well, actually, it's one less because of the additional student day, so it's one less
Okay, so
professional
yeah.
day than this past year. Yes, because the teacher work days are the same, so it's one less.
Sorry, I think we got a little ahead of ourselves. So first, we heard the recommendation. Would someone like to make a
Oh,
motion?
yes, sorry.
That's okay.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Sanborn. Is there a second? Mr. Rudy, thank you. Is now, obviously, think we got all the discussion out of the way.
Ms. Sanborn,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Spencer,
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
5 yes.
Thank you.
I'll keep my comments brief tonight. I want to thank the Williamsville Church of Christ. They hosted a Thanksgiving dinner for our community and our families at WT this Saturday. It was a great event, and we are so thankful for our partners. We know the Boosters Craft Fair, which is a West Clermont legendary event, is scheduled for November 30th, 9 to 3, so we want to invite families out for that as they're celebrating the holidays. And on December 9th, we'll have another board meeting. That board meeting is focused on the resolution to proceed. That will be brought forward to you guys, so it's an important one that we would love to hear feedback from our community before that event. And I just want to highlight that on December 4th, Dan and I will be leading a group of key communicators. These are leaders from CAC, CAT, the PTOs, boosters, our parent, and our team organization leaders to come out and talk about the financing our future, learning a little bit about that and answering any of their questions that they are hearing or that they have for themselves. We have 2 sessions. One will be at 10 and the other one will be at 6. And the whole idea of this is to continue to focus on a small group in this semester, and then in the winter, offer up one town hall a month in January, February, and March, where we continue the conversation with a larger audience. So just wanted to let you know about that. And overall, just want to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone. We hope that everyone enjoys time with their family and being off school and just kind of taking a pause before we hit and round out the year of 2024. That's it. It's showing. Yeah. Do you need the presentation view?
Yep.
I guess it's not extending because it's giving your presentation view, it's just duplicating.
So, let me just do. What's that? Oh, go ahead. Yeah, one of those two. No. That's just the side controller. It's this section here. I believe that will be. We have a lot of windows open. That's right. It believes it's on another screen. It believes it's on another screen.
She wasn't feeling well tonight.
Just go back on the extend again. Yep. Yeah, there you go. Okay. All right, thank you, thanks, Larry. So, item 9.01 is our five-year forecast. And again, the five-year forecast is presented to the board, request for approval twice a year, once in May, once in November. November is the initial one, updated then again in May. To do that, I'm not going to go through the normal presentation, which in the past, I go through 30-some slides. This five-year forecast is very similar to the forecast that we did in May. The major difference is it adds one more fiscal period, FY '29, fiscal year '29 to the presentation. So it gives us 3 years of actual, the 22, 23, and 24 fiscal years. It provides the current year's budget, the estimate of revenues that was provided actually and certified by the county auditor, and then the appropriation measure that the board approved in before the end of September to go forward. The total amounts for this current fiscal year are very similar to what was presented in May, and so are the results or the forecast for 25, 26, for 26, 27, 28. The new addition again is fiscal year 29. And it's important to note that the five-year forecast is submitted to the Department of Education and to the State Auditor's Office. Their oversight, their review of our forecast gives them an indication of how fiscally sound we are and or whether or not we are headed towards a period of fiscal distress. Like most school districts, the further out you go, there appears to be fiscal distress primarily due to the fact that in school districts, the way we're funded in the state of Ohio, and specifically this school district, is that our ability to get new revenue really comes from three primary areas. If we are under the state funding formula, as we add students, then we would get additional funding. With our state funding, we are under a guarantee. So as the superintendent and I well know, we do not get any more money from the state than we received back in 22, which really relates back to 2019. The one exception was last fiscal year where we went off the guarantee for one period, but then when the reappraisal, the property reappraisal came in, because that is an offset, that put us back on a state guarantee. Most districts right now are moving towards that guarantee because of the increase in reappraisal with that. The other two areas to gain revenue are, one, if a issue is submitted to the voters, a property tax or an school district income tax is submitted to the voters, and they have an affirmative vote on that. The third way, similar to West Clermont, is if that school district is at the 20 mil floor, which means that they are at a taxing mechanism where the millage that they have over time has increased enough that as valuations increase, going back to 1976, there's an equalization formula where the rate is reduced, but the rate cannot fall below 20 mils or 2% of the property valuation that is done. We are at that 20 mil floor. We've been at that 20 mil floor for some time. And so in 23, as those property values as the reappraisal took place and property values increased, the district did receive additional revenue. So of those three areas to gain in 23, we did have an increase in revenue because of that. That is reflected in our go forward. As we look towards the next reappraisal, which is in 2026, and even with some, cursory conversations with the county auditor's office, we do not believe that the significant increase in property values will take place. There will be some new construction, but not a significant amount. So in the future years, in the reappraisals, we only built about 5% into those projections as we go forward. But again, as we submit the forecast to the Department of Education and the Auditor of State's office, they do a review as to whether or not we are in a state or headed towards a state of fiscal distress for it. So the summary slide is what's going on with our revenues, what's going on with our expenses. As I just described, revenues only increase incrementally when one of those three situations occur. If you look at this chart, our blue line is the revenues, so we had a stair step up from 23 to 24 with a property value increase, and then it flattens out. The red line represents our expenses. Our expenses follow inflation, wages and salaries, benefits, the contract services that we have with various vendors, the supplies and materials that we purchase, and the capital that we do out of the operating fund. The difference between the revenues and expenses, you are either at a surplus or a deficit. So you are either at a spending surplus where you are, at the end of the year, revenue is greater than the expenses, so we're adding cash to our cash balance. Or as shown in 25, we're kind of at a balanced position. Our revenues and expenses equal each other. So the cash at the beginning of the year is pretty much the same as the cash at the end of the year. Or as you look at 25 and beyond, the red line exceeds the blue line. So our expenses are greater than our revenue, which means at the end of the year, we are at a spending deficit. And so because of that deficit, our cash balance is starting to decline. The green line represents that cash balance. So our cash balance built up through 24 stayed the same or projected to stay the same through 25. And then because we were spending more than we're receiving, the cash balance starts to decline. If you transfer that ending cash balance into what we call true days cash, that looks at the end of June, when we have that cash balance, how long would that last? How many days would that cash balance last if we didn't have any more revenue coming in? There's a target from the Government Finance Officers Association of 60 days. You should have a minimum of 60 days on hand. Okay, we built up to 95 days last year. We about the same in 93. The reason why it goes down, even though it's the same cash balance, is because our expenses are higher. So the couple days peel off. You'll see that as we go down into fiscal year 27, we're down to about 49 days, which is less than the recommended 60. So that is at the point where we are looking to infuse some more revenue or reduce our expenses as we go forward. So as we have committed in the past, in 2020, we said we would not come back to the voters for operating funds until 24. We were able to and are able to extend that to fiscal year 26. But as you see with this chart, there's a need for additional revenue based on this current forecast, okay, for FY 27. The story on the revenues is clear. We get 65% of our funding in the operating fund from local sources, property taxes, and other local revenue, approximately 35% from the state. The story behind that is, if we look back in prior years, last year it was 35%. The year before that, it was close to 37%. So as time is going on, and because the state is holding us on a fixed dollar amount, that state share is going to decline. The percentage will decline. The uncertainties with our revenue, superintendent and myself advocate as much as possible with our state legislators. The current funding formula and what we see as some difficulties with our school district is that it has, as Mr. Fultz really described with the enrollment, and when we looked at different special need groups, whether it was English language learners, whether it was special education, whether it was gifted, those are considered categorical programs. In the past, those used to be funded outside the formula, before the Fair School Funding Formula. When it was funded outside the formula, it wasn't under a guarantee, so as student enrollment increased, the district received additional funding. When the new funding formula came into place 4 years ago, that stopped. All of the different elements were rolled into the formula. So when you look at West Clermont, although as he described, our enrollment in total may not have grown, but the different categories grew, and there's required spending under those categories, okay, it meant that we were shifting dollars from regular traditional students, because the state's not giving us any more, okay, we're shifting dollars to those special needs groups. And those are mandatory costs that we really have to go through with. Our revenue grows at about 1% as we look forward, but if we look at inflation, as we know, it's a minimum of 3 to 5% in any one of those categories that we have, an average of 5% that is there. On our expenses, like most school districts, our wages and benefits comprise about 75% of the total budget. On appearance, that seems low compared to other school districts. The reason why that is low is because some of our services like transportation are contracted out. So we don't employ the bus drivers, it is contracted out. So that 75.5% appears to be low, but if we were to draw out the cost of those bus drivers and their salaries, it would bring us up to probably over 80%, which is in line with all the other school districts. Graph is simple here. It follows the path of inflation. We really are not adding additional programs. We talk a lot about the upward and onward program from the ESSER funding, from the federal assistance funding. That has ended this past September. Thankful to the leadership of this school district, we were able to build most of those needs into our operating fund, without any type of devastation. We had planned on that. We ended up making sure that staff was then retained within the general fund going forward to do that. So we did not hit a cliff within the school district to do it. Kind of ending with what I began with is, where are we at? We are at a point of stabilization in 25. In FY26, we are seeing that expenses are surpassing our revenue. Where it gets to be somewhat alarming as we look into the future is into that end of FY26, beginning of FY27 year, where, depending on how things go in the next 2 or 3 years, looking at coming back for a need of additional revenue, and or basically cutting programs and reducing our budget. We continue again to have the advocacy with our state legislators. 2 things that are going on right now that are critical to us. One is there is a new biennium, so we want to make sure, even though it may not impact us positively in additional dollars, that funding formula that the state has is fully funded. And 2, we want to protect our local sources of revenue. The Property Tax Review Committee is supposed to come up with some recommendations by the end of the calendar year. So we're anticipating that. There are some bills within the legislature that looks at targeting assistance to property taxpayers. We believe that is a good thing, and support that. But if we're vulnerable anywhere, it is, if there is some legislation that looks at either putting a ceiling on what we can collect and/or taking revenue away from us locally. So we want to protect what we have as we go forward. Again, the forecast is not too different from what we had in May, except for the additional year that we went forward with. And so if I could move forward, requesting the approval of the 5-year forecast as presented to the board.
Thank
I
you,
would ask
Mr.
if there's any questions on the forecast.
Thank you, Mr. Romano. You've heard the recommendation. Would someone like to make a motion? Thank you, Mr. Rudy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Sanborn. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn.
Yes.
Mrs. Spencer.
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
5 yes. Thank you. As far as comments, following up, again, as always, we put that financial forecast with the notes and with the presentation on our website. It also stays on the board docs under the board agenda, becomes part of the minutes. We want to thank the administration and board for recognizing the team that did the Take Care of Your Selfie too. They put a lot of work into that at a very minimal cost to the district. And Paula Wolf is the one that really accepted the challenge of making this year's better than last year's, and I think took that on. The cost, by the way, to our out-of-pocket cost was less than $4,000 to put that on. And so with, the assistance of our partners, with the assistance of our staff, that goes pretty well. That whole effort is connected to our wellness program. I still believe it is one of the unique ones within the state, if not, nationally. And again, it is, you can make the statement that we care about our staff, but then you can also do something about it. And I think our wellness program is what we do about caring for our staff with that, so at least part of that as we go forward. Superintendent had mentioned the financing our future meetings for December 4th. And again, we are continuing our advocacy efforts, both to support the school district and the people within our community. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Romano. Next is a board comments. Start with
I always
Mrs.
get to
Spencer.
start. I'm always on the end.
You moved.
No. Well, thanks, everybody, for coming, and I appreciate, she already left, but I appreciate her comments about the decisions and about the bond and the levy that we are looking at. I appreciate Dan doing all the work, and he always makes everything seem so, I don't know, I can at least understand a little bit of the finances when he explains it a little bit better. But I just want to reassure everybody as a board member that I take my job very seriously, and that we try to work together to do what's best for the students and making sure that our school is physically responsible in what the decisions that we make here. I do continue to do the best that I can, and I hope that the community will stay involved and coming to the meetings and going to the all of the school, town halls. That's it, town halls. Those are very informative, and we gather a lot of data and stuff from that. So, and I appreciate any ideas that people bring that can be kind of. I like hearing kind of maybe off the wall or kind of very creative ideas, because those are the things that change the way the status quo is always done. And I appreciate anybody that brings any kind of different and new ideas. But I appreciate any ideas that people come and bring. But that's all I have to say. Enjoy. I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving. Enjoy your time with the fam.
Thank you, Ms. Spencer. Ms. Sanborn?
I'd like to thank the members that came this evening. I really appreciate it. I'm not saying the students, teachers, and community don't deserve a new facility, but I am saying not at this time. Many families in our community are facing economic hardship. We have had town halls, focus groups, and various groups, many of which I have attended. These groups gave their suggestions and opinions of the master plan. We need to see where the economy is next year, and then possibly bring back this item for discussion and a thought exchange. We could then see where the community is and how they feel about moving forward with this plan. I agree with the master facility plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hanford. Mr. Chumley?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody involved with this. In the over a year-long kind of dive we've made and the transparency we've had throughout every bit of it, the hard work everyone's put into it. I want to especially thank our board. There's religion, politics, and money are never a fun conversation. I'm sure we're going to be having plenty of those on Thursday with our families, but sitting here talking about this for a year is not, it's not fun, but it's what we're doing for our children, and I'm glad we have the team we have to make these hard decisions. So I want to thank all of you for putting in the time and for walking alongside us as we do it. So hope everyone has a good and happy Thanksgiving and enjoys time with your families.
Thank you, Mr. Chumley. Mr. Rudy?
Well, as I mentioned before, I visited every building in the district. Mr. LaFada and, Dr. Foltz accompanied me, and Mrs. Adams was there some of the time. And after seeing it, I understand why we need the building program, or the building project. I'm glad we decided tonight as a board to go ahead with it. And I just hope that the public will accept it, our voters will accept it, and we can move forward. Because I believe it's the right thing to do for kids, and that's my main focus. Tempered with what the staff needs and the community the needs of the community. But I don't think it's not going to get any cheaper later. So I say we go and do it now. I'm very excited about it.
Thank you, Mr. Rudy.
And happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Eat a lot of turkey and ham.
All I have to say is happy Thanksgiving. We do have a need to go into executive session for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee, to consider the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, official, licensee, or student. Would someone like to make a motion?
So
Thank you, Mr. Chumley. Second, Mr. Rudy. Is there any discussion? Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Rudy?
yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes.
Mrs. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
5 yes to move into executive session.
Ms. Adams, we have no need for a vote when we come
We
back.
won't,
from
no.
There's no need to come back. There's nothing to vote on.
Next meeting, December 9th.
Thank you.